All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling AI deployment pitfalls.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's a big one, and I know this is something that a lot of listeners have written in about. We've got a fantastic guide here called Overcoming Common Pitfalls in AI Deployments, and we've got a few case studies to go along with it.
Perfect.
And one of the things that's just kind of blown me away, getting into this is how many AI projects actually fail.
Yeah.
Even with all this like amazing technology we have and the progress that's being made, it's kind of surprising.
It really is. And I think part of that is because people approach it with this idea that it's like this purely technical
Oh,
process.
interesting.
They think like, oh, we just build the algorithm, we plug it in, and then magic happens.
Yeah, AI will solve all our problems.
Right, exactly. And that's really not the case.
So I guess like what is AI deployment then?
So the guide defines it as taking a model that you've developed and putting it to use, like in a real business environment.
Okay, so it's like taking it out of the lab and putting it into the real world.
Precisely. And that's where things get a lot more complex than maybe people initially realize.
So what are some of those like non-technical elements that make this harder than it seems?
Well, it's a lot about strategy, about having the right data, making sure your infrastructure can actually handle it, having the right people, the talent,
Yeah.
and even the culture of the organization,
Yeah.
Like, is the business actually ready to change the way it works, to accommodate this new AI-powered way of doing things?
Yeah, that makes sense. So like it's not just about the technology, it's about everything surrounding it.
Right.
Okay, so let's dig into some of the pitfalls that the guide highlights. The first one that jumped out at me was this idea of misalignment.
Oh, yeah.
Like misalignment between the AI project and the actual goals of the business.
It seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how often it happens.
Right.
We see this in one of the case studies, a retail company. They built this really sophisticated recommendation engine.
Okay.
It looked great on paper, really complex algorithms, personalized suggestions. The problem was it wasn't aligned with what customers actually wanted.
Really?
Yeah, they were recommending products that people just weren't interested in.
So even if the technology is really good, if it's solving the wrong problem, it's not going to help.
Exactly. It's a wasted effort.
So, all right, so even if you've got that alignment figured out, the next pitfall, and this is a big one, is all about the data.
Yeah.
The guide stresses that bad data is like the downfall of so many AI projects. Why is that?
Well, think of data as the fuel that your AI runs on. If
Okay,
you're putting bad fuel in, the engine's not going to run properly.
that makes sense.
And we see this play out really dramatically in the case of this logistics company.
Okay.
They were trying to use AI for predictive maintenance, predicting when equipment needed repairs.
Oh, so they could prevent things from breaking down.
Exactly. That was the goal. But their system was just giving them all these wrong predictions.
Oh, no.
And it turned out the reason was, you test it out with a limited data set, a small group of users.
Hmm.
But then when you try to scale it up to handle real world demand, that's when things fall apart.
I see. So it's kind of like you build this model airplane
Uh-huh.
and it looks great. It flies perfectly in your living room, but then you take it outside and it just can't handle the wind.
Exactly. It can't handle the real world. And with AI, that can mean really slow processing times when you're dealing with massive amounts of data.
Mm.
The system might crash if too many people are using it at the same time,
Oh, yeah.
or it just might not be able to integrate with all the other systems in your business as it grows.
So it's like building a house on a foundation that's too small.
Exactly. You need a foundation that can support what you want to build on top of it.
And I guess that leads us to the next pitfall, which is underestimating the infrastructure needs.
Yeah,
Because you need the right technology in place to support this AI, right?
absolutely. And a lot of companies, especially those with older systems, they try to shoehorn these really powerful AI applications into these outdated legacy systems.
Like trying to run the latest video game on a really old computer.
Exactly. It's just not going to work well.
Yeah.
You're going to have compatibility issues. Things are going to be slow. You might not even be able to transfer data efficiently.
Right.
It really highlights how AI is a strategic investment. You might need to upgrade your entire tech ecosystem.
So we're talking about potentially moving to the cloud, modernizing those legacy systems, really overhauling things.
It's about creating an environment where AI can really thrive, not just barely survive.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another critical component, which is the team itself.
Okay, so we're talking about the people building and deploying this AI.
Exactly. And the guide stresses that it's not just about having the right technical expertise.
Right, so it's more than just hiring a bunch of data scientists.
It's about having a diverse set of skills. Yes, you need your data scientists, your machine learning engineers,
Uh-huh.
but you also need domain experts who really understand your specific industry
Okay, why is that so important?
because they provide the context.
Uh,
They make sure that the AI is actually solving a real business problem and that the results make sense in the context of your industry.
so it's not just about building a fancy algorithm, it's about understanding how to apply it.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
you also need project managers to keep everything on track, make sure everyone's working together effectively.
Yeah.
It's really like putting together a team of specialists, each with their own unique skills.
Like a sports team almost. You
Yeah,
need your star players, but you also need coaches, trainers, the whole support staff.
exactly. Communication, collaboration, a shared understanding of the goals, those are all crucial.
And that makes me think about the next pitfall in the guide, which is insufficient change management
Oh, yeah.
and user adoption. And that seems to be, again, about the people involved.
It is. It's about the human side of AI. Because you can have the most amazing technology, but if people don't understand it, if they're resistant to using it, it's not going to succeed.
So how do you address that? How do you make sure that the people who are going to be using this AI are actually on board with it?
Well, it starts with engaging stakeholders early and often.
Okay.
And by stakeholders, I mean everyone who's going to be affected by this AI. You need to communicate clearly, explain the benefits, address any concerns people might have, and even involve them in the process whenever possible.
That makes sense. So give them a sense of ownership.
Exactly. Make them feel like they're part of this. The guide gives a really great example of this in the healthcare industry.
Oh, okay.
There was this healthcare provider who was trying to implement an AI-powered diagnostic tool,
Mm-hmm.
but the doctors were really skeptical.
I can imagine. Yeah.
They saw it as a threat to their expertise.
Right. Like the AI is going to replace them.
Exactly. So what this provider did was they invested heavily in training for the doctors.
Mm.
They brought in some early adopters to be kind of AI ambassadors to their colleagues.
Interesting.
And they created this culture where feedback was encouraged.
So they were really proactive about addressing those concerns and anxieties.
Absolutely. And it worked.
Hmm.
The doctors started to see the value of this AI as a tool to help them, not to replace them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's really about understanding the human element of this, not just the technology.
Absolutely. Technology is only one part of the equation. You have to
Yeah.
win over the people
Yeah.
who are going to be using it.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've seen how even with all the advancements in AI, deployment can be tricky.
Yeah,
But we've also learned some really valuable lessons from these pitfalls.
we have.
So in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to shift gears and focus on what we can do to set ourselves up for success.
That's right. We're going to look at the best practices, the strategies, the tools that can help us avoid those pitfalls and actually make AI work for us.
I'm excited to dive into that.
Me too. Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back after a short break. All right, welcome back, everyone. We just spent some time exploring some of the common pitfalls that companies encounter when they're trying to deploy AI.
Yeah, some real cautionary tales there.
Yeah, but the good news is we're not going to dwell on the negative, right?
Yeah.
We're going to shift gears now and focus on what we can do to set ourselves up for success.
That's right. We're going to look at the best practices.
All right, so let's start at the beginning, shall we? The guide really emphasizes this idea of strategic alignment.
Mhm.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, in simple terms, it means making sure your AI initiative isn't just some shiny new toy, but a tool that's directly supporting your core business goals.
So it's not enough to just say, hey, AI is cool, let's do something with it.
Right, exactly. You need a much more focused approach.
Yeah.
It starts with bringing together your business stakeholders, the people who understand the business needs, and your tech experts, the ones who understand what AI can do.
Okay, so it's like a team effort from the very beginning.
Exactly. And then you work together to figure out what problems you're actually trying to solve with AI, or what opportunities you're trying to seize.
So it's like having a brainstorming session, a meeting of the minds to figure out how AI can actually move the needle for the business.
Precisely. And once you have that shared understanding, you need to establish clear, measurable goals. And those goals should be tied directly to business outcomes.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. Let's say your goal is to reduce customer churn. Instead of just stating that broadly, you define what success looks like in concrete terms.
Okay.
So you might say, We aim to reduce churn by 10% within the next quarter by using AI-driven insights.
Ah, so you're not just saying you reduce churn, you're actually putting a number on it.
Exactly. And that gives you a specific target to aim for.
Makes sense. And how does this idea of a balanced scorecard that the guide mentions fit into all of this?
A balanced scorecard is a great way to make sure you're not just looking at success through a narrow lens.
Okay, so it's not just about like the financial bottom line.
Right. It encourages you to consider the impact on your customers,
Mm-hmm.
your internal processes,
Yeah.
and even your ability to innovate.
So it's about having a more holistic view of what success means.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our strategic alignment figured out. We have our goals. We're looking at things from multiple perspectives. What's the next crucial element?
Data. We've talked about the dangers of bad data.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. But now let's flip that around and focus on how to make sure your data is an asset, a valuable asset. It's all about building that solid foundation for your AI.
So where do we begin with building that foundation? What are the key things to keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, you need a robust data pipeline.
Hmm.
This is the engine that drives your data from collection to cleaning, transformation, and storage.
Okay, so it's like an assembly line for data, making sure it's processed correctly at each stage.
That's a great way to think about it. And that this pipeline should be automated as much as possible. That ensures efficiency and accuracy.
Right, so it's not just about having the data, it's about managing it effectively. Can you unpack that idea of a data pipeline a bit more? What are the key elements involved?
Sure. A typical data pipeline has several stages. First, you have data ingestion, where you're collecting data from various sources.
Okay, so that's like gathering all the raw materials.
Exactly. Then comes data cleaning and transformation. This is where you deal with any inconsistencies, missing values, formatting issues. You're essentially getting the data ready to be used.
So it's like prepping the ingredients before you start cooking.
Exactly. And finally, you have data storage, where the processed data is stored in a secure and accessible way.
Got it. So we're collecting, cleaning, storing our data. What about making sure that data stays clean and relevant over time?
That's where data monitoring comes into play. You need to be vigilant about identifying and addressing what's called data drift.
Data drift. That sounds ominous. What is that?
It's actually more common than you might think. It happens when the data your AI is using starts to differ significantly from the data it was originally trained on.
So it's like the data is going out of date?
In a way, yes. It can happen for a variety of reasons. Changes in customer behavior, shifts in the market, even seasonal variations.
So the AI might start making decisions based on outdated information. How do we prevent that?
The key is to catch it early. That's why the guide talks about setting up automated alerts.
So it's like having a smoke detector for your data.
Exactly. These alerts can notify you if there are significant changes in your data patterns, allowing you to investigate and address the issue before it becomes a bigger problem.
That's fantastic. It's like having a safety net for your data.
Right. Now, we've talked about pipelines, cleaning, monitoring, but there's another critical aspect to good data management: data governance.
Okay, data governance. What does that involve?
Data governance is all about establishing clear roles, responsibilities, and processes for managing data throughout its entire life cycle.
So it's like setting the ground rules for how data is handled.
Exactly. It ensures data quality, security, and compliance with any relevant regulations. It's about accountability, integrity, and building trust in your data.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having a rule book to make sure everyone's on the same page when it comes to handling this valuable resource.
Mhm.
So we've covered data pretty thoroughly now. What's the next step on our journey to AI deployment success?
Scalability. Remember that model airplane analogy?
I do, yeah.
We need to make sure our AI can handle the real world, that it can grow with our business.
Right. No more building things that can't handle the big leagues. So how do we make sure our AI can actually scale effectively?
One approach is to embrace a modular architecture, like using microservices. Instead of building one giant monolithic AI system, you break it down into smaller, independent components.
It's like building with Legos. You can add or remove pieces without having to rebuild the entire thing.
Exactly. This modularity makes your system much more flexible. You can scale specific parts up or down as needed without having to rebuild the whole thing.
That's brilliant. And I remember we talked about the power of cloud computing for scalability as well.
Oh, absolutely. Cloud platforms offer incredible flexibility and elasticity. You can scale your resources up or down on demand. and you only pay for what you use.
That's a huge advantage, especially for AI, which can require a lot of computing power.
Exactly. The cloud can really give your AI superpowers.
Now, the guide also mentions something called hybrid architectures. What are those all about?
Hybrid architectures combine on-premises resources with cloud infrastructure.
Okay.
So it might be a good option for companies that have sensitive data they need to keep on site, but still want to take advantage of the cloud's scalability.
So it's about finding the right balance for your specific needs.
Exactly.
Are there any specific tools or technologies that are particularly helpful for scaling AI?
Oh, definitely. Containerization, using tools like Docker, is incredibly valuable. It helps you package your AI models in a way that makes them easy to deploy and manage across different environments.
So it's like putting your AI in a portable container.
Exactly. And then you have orchestration platforms like Kubernetes, which help you manage and automate the deployment, scaling, and networking of these containerized applications.
It sounds like there's a whole ecosystem of tools to help with scalability.
There is.
Oh,
And the key is to plan for it from the beginning. Don't wait until you hit a wall.
right. Build it in from the start. And while we're on the topic of technology, let's talk about upgrading existing infrastructure.
Yes, you need to make sure the underlying technology can actually support the demands of AI. It's like making sure the stage is strong enough to support the performance.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So what are some strategies for upgrading infrastructure? Do we have to, like, rip and replace everything?
Not necessarily. It really depends on your specific situation.
Yeah.
But there are often ways to modernize existing systems.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to upgrade your databases to handle larger volumes of data,
Hmm.
or invest in specialized hardware like GPUs or TPUs, which can accelerate model training and processing.
The guide also mentioned middleware and integration platforms. What are those and how do they help?
Middleware acts like a translator between different systems that might not speak the same language.
Okay.
It allows your legacy systems to talk to your new AI tools and share data.
So it's like building a bridge between the old and the new.
Exactly. And remember, containerization, which we talked about earlier, that can also play a role in modernizing legacy systems. By containerizing your AI applications, you create a more consistent environment, which reduces compatibility issues.
So many tools and strategies. It's amazing how much thought needs to go into just the tech side of this.
It is, and it highlights how AI deployment is much more than just building a model.
Right. It's about the whole ecosystem. Speaking of which, we can't forget about the people involved.
The people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even with the best technology in place, you need the right team to make it all work.
And the guide emphasizes that building an effective AI team isn't just about hiring data scientists, right?
You need a multidisciplinary approach.
So break it down for me. What are the essential roles and expertise we need on this dream team?
Well, at the core, of course, you need your data scientists, the ones who develop the algorithms, build the models.
Mhm.
Then you have machine learning engineers who focus on actually implementing and deploying those models.
So the data scientist is like the architect, and the machine learning engineer is the builder.
I like that. But there's more. You also need data engineers.
Okay, what do they do?
They're the ones who build and maintain those data pipelines we talked about.
Right, so they're making sure the data is flowing smoothly, that it's clean, organized, ready to be used.
Exactly. And then you have MLOps engineers. They're focused on the operational side of things, making sure the models are deployed reliably, monitored effectively, continuously improved.
So they're like the pit crew, keeping the AI running smoothly.
Perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we can't forget about our domain experts.
Right, the people who understand the specific industry or business problem you're trying to address.
Exactly. They bring that invaluable context and make sure the AI solution is actually relevant.
It's like having a translator between the technical world of AI and the real-world challenges of your business.
I love that.
Yeah.
And finally, you need strong project managers to keep everything on track, manage budgets, make sure everyone's working together.
It really is like assembling a championship sports team. You need a diverse set of skills, a shared vision, and a strong leader to guide them.
Absolutely. And just like in sports, communication is key. You need a culture where people feel comfortable sharing ideas, asking questions, learning from each other.
That's so important. Okay, so we've got our dream team, our technology is in place, our data is sparkling clean and ready to go. What's the last piece of the puzzle?
Change management. This is where we shift from the technical to the human side of AI deployment. We need to make sure that the people who are going to be using this AI are on board, that they understand its benefits, and that they're prepared for the changes it's going to bring.
Right. We've seen how resistance to change can really sabotage even the most brilliant AI project.
It's true. And the best way to avoid that is through communication. You need to engage stakeholders early and often, just like we talked about before.
Okay.
Explain the benefits of the AI, address any concerns head on, and even involve them in the process.
So make them feel like they're part of the solution, not just having something imposed on them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And training is essential too. Tailor your training to different user groups, make sure it's relevant, engaging, and addresses their specific needs and concerns.
So meet people where they are and give them the support they need to feel comfortable with this new technology.
Exactly. And find those champions, those early adopters who are excited about AI, and turn them into your AI ambassadors.
So they can spread the word and get other people excited.
Exactly. And don't forget about feedback. Get feedback from users, listen to their suggestions, and make adjustments as needed.
That shows that you're really listening and that you're committed to making this AI work for everyone. Welcome back, everyone. We've talked about the pitfalls, we've talked about the best practices, and now it's time to see how this all plays out in the real world.
Yeah, I love case studies.
Me too! It's always fascinating to see how these concepts translate into actual results.
Right. You can learn so much from other people's experiences, both the successes and the failures.
Exactly. So we've got 3 case studies here from the guide that I think really bring this to life.
Perfect.
Let's start with a success story, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so case study number 1 features an e-commerce company. They wanted to implement a recommendation engine to personalize the customer experience.
So suggesting products to customers based on their browsing history, past purchases, that sort of thing.
Exactly, and they wanted to be able to deliver these personalized recommendations to millions of users in real time.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Yeah, and their pilot project was actually a huge success. They saw an 18% increase in click-through rates with their initial model.
That's awesome.
Right, but then they hit a wall when they tried to scale it up to their entire user base.
Oh, so they ran into those scalability issues we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Their existing infrastructure just couldn't handle the volume of data, the number of user requests. They started experiencing lag, delays. It was impacting the customer experience.
So what did they do?
Well, they realized they had to go back and re-architect their system. They ended up embracing a microservices approach.
Breaking it down into smaller, more manageable components.
Exactly. And they also migrated their system to the cloud.
Smart move. That gives them the flexibility and scalability they need.
Right. And the results were impressive. They saw a significant improvement in performance, much faster response times, and most importantly, their conversion rates increased by 11%.
Wow. So a direct impact on their bottom line. That's a great example of how investing in the right infrastructure can really pay off.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to case study number 2, which really highlights the importance of data quality.
Ooh, yeah, this is a big one.
It is. So this case study focuses on an insurance firm that was looking to automate their claims processing using AI.
Okay, makes sense. Trying to streamline things, make it more efficient.
Exactly. And their initial pilot project showed a lot of promise. They saw a 25% reduction in processing time.
That's significant.
It is, but when they rolled out the AI system to handle all of their claims, things went downhill fast.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, the AI started making all these inaccurate predictions, leading to incorrect approvals and denials.
Oh wow, so it was actually costing them money.
Yeah, and it turned out that the root cause was the data they had used to train their AI model.
What was wrong with the data?
It was full of inconsistencies, errors, and it was just poorly managed overall.
So the AI was learning from bad data, which led to bad decisions.
Classic garbage in, garbage out scenario.
Exactly. And unfortunately, they only discovered this after they had scaled up the system.
Yeah, that pilot project had kind of masked the data quality issues because they were using a smaller, cleaner data set.
Right. So it's a reminder that you need to look at the whole picture, not just a small slice.
Absolutely. Okay, let's wrap things up with case study number 3, which really focuses on the human side of AI deployment.
Oh, interesting. The people factor.
Exactly. This one involves a healthcare provider that was implementing an AI-powered diagnostic tool.
Okay, so using AI to help doctors diagnose diseases.
Exactly, specifically rare diseases. And the AI tool had actually performed really well in clinical trials.
So the technology itself was sound.
Yeah, but when they introduced it to the doctors, they met a lot of resistance.
I can imagine that's a big change to their workflow.
Right, and I think there was this fear of being replaced by the AI.
Yeah, I've heard that concern from a lot of doctors.
So how did they overcome this resistance? Because they had this amazing tool, but the doctors weren't using it?
Well, they realized that they needed to win over the hearts and minds of the doctors. It wasn't enough just to give them the technology.
So they launched a pretty comprehensive change management program.
What did that involve?
Well, they invested heavily in training, but it wasn't just any training. They tailored the training to the doctor's specific concerns.
Okay, so they addressed those fears head on.
Exactly. And they also found some doctors who were really excited about the technology and turned them into AI champions.
So they could share their positive experiences with their colleagues.
Exactly. Peer-to-peer influence can be really powerful.
That's smart.
Yeah, and they also created a feedback loop. So they were constantly getting input from the doctors and making adjustments to the system.
So they were really showing that they valued the doctor's input and that they were committed to making this work.
Exactly. And the results speak for themselves. The adoption rate for the tool steadily increased.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they saw significant improvements in diagnostic accuracy and a reduction in delays.
That's a great example of how important the human side of this is. You can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't bring people along on the journey, it's not going to succeed.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored those potential pitfalls, we've looked at the best practices, and we've seen how it all plays out in the real world. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap things up?
I would just say that AI deployment is a journey, and it can be a complex one, but with the right approach, the right planning, and the right mindset, it's a journey that can lead to incredible results.
Well said. And as we've seen, it's a journey that requires more than just technical expertise. It's about understanding the business needs, the data, the infrastructure, and most importantly, the people.
Absolutely. It's about bringing all those pieces together.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI deployment. I hope you found it insightful, informative, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of AI.